Hey, everybody, it's Winter here with the Shift Spotlight, and today we are here with John DeShazer of LogicSpree, and he can be found at LogicSpree.com. That's LogicSpree.com. Welcome, John, to the Shift Spotlight.
Winter, thank you for having me. And hello, everyone. As Winter mentioned, my name is John DeShazer, and I'm the president and founder of LogicSpree.
So we have a lot to talk about today, but first I got to talk about your background. You're in my hometown, which is pretty rare for us to have a guest from Atlanta. So tell us, how did you end up in Atlanta? Most people they weren't raised here like me, so they kind of ended up here. Tell us how you got here.
I'm one of the rare people that was born here. So I was born here in Atlanta, raised, educated, and here I am.
All right. So where were you born? What hospital?
Northside.
The Baby Making Hospital. So, well, I'm really excited to talk to you today because you are somewhat of a newer CEO, 5 to 6 years owning your own company, right? So you've definitely had some bumps and bruises along the way, along with some really great successes as well. And what we do on the Shift Spotlight is all about, showcasing what we're really great at and what we've done well and what we sort of screwed up at too, because, you learn as much from your mistakes as you do from your successes. So at a high level, why don't you tell our listeners what you do?
Yeah, at a high level, my organization, LogicSpree, we're a Salesforce professional services firm. So we help organizations implement Salesforce, but also manage that environment post-go live as well. And we focus on the small and mid-market organizations. Gotcha.
So what type of industries or businesses do you work with?
Yeah, so we work across various industries, but it's really about the size of the organization. So we typically work with organizations that are between 50 employees to 300 employees, or revenue between $15 million to $100 million in annual revenue.
So what is it about that employee count or revenue count that ends up, meshing well with what you do?
Yeah, so Salesforce, at that scale, that's where you get to a level of sophistication where support is really recommended and is needed. When you believe that, a lot of times self-implementation is usually fine, but because it's such a flexible tool, it can help you scale. But once you start scaling, you really do need professional services or to hire someone in-house to help you customize the tool for your new processes.
Gotcha. Okay. Now, Salesforce doesn't have the best reputation for being the easiest platform to use. And I noticed when I was, doing some research that you say you've developed a reputation for transforming the complex into the simple and converting the simple into success. How exactly have you done that?
To put it simply, by focusing less on the technology itself and more on the processes. So who's going to be using Salesforce? What are they going to be using it for? Why are they using it? And then, how? So looking at the end user and thinking of the technology as just a tool. So we focus on seeing the business and the business model, the processes, and then adapting Salesforce to that versus the other way around.
Gotcha. Okay. And so what do most people do when they're implementing Salesforce into a business? How does the reverse happen?
They purchase Salesforce and they look to either implement straight out of the box, which is a pretty vanilla tool because it's extremely customizable, but it is not suited for every industry right out of the box. So organizations, they just try to use it out of the box, or they try to configure it themselves, in which if you can dream up something, you can do it with Salesforce, but that is also a very dangerous thing.
Right. So can you share with us a customer success story or an example of how Salesforce implemented correctly has significantly improved their sales or marketing or customer service operations? Because again, I think that we see the advertisements. We see Salesforce out there. We know there's some sort of CRM thing going on, but I think that the average person may not always understand exactly what Salesforce can do for them.
Yeah. So Salesforce is really, it's really about scalability and scalability done with processes. Once you have defined processes, you can use a tool like Salesforce to drive that forward with your organization. And with those standard operating procedures in place, you can add new resources, add new people, but you can measure those outcomes as well. So whether it's you're looking at new leads, new customers, new support tickets, or even new partners, you have a system that helps you manage your processes. And one example that I have with one of our customers, when we came in with them, they were on the verge of canceling the Salesforce environment or their contract with Salesforce because it had been overgrown. It had been developed in a way that it was not useful for their tool, for their team. So we came in and did an analysis of their business model, their processes, spoke with their end users to understand what their needs were. And then we spent the next month or probably next month and a half on reconfiguring Salesforce to align to those teams. As of today, they're leveraging Salesforce to scale their operations, scale their organization, because they're seeing the data, they're seeing what works, and they're seeing what needs to change as well. So it gives leadership that visibility, but it gives their team the ability to execute as well.
Gotcha. Is that what the Logi test is that I've seen that you talk about on your website? Is that like how you diagnose the problem?
Exactly. So the logic test is just that deep dive into the business processes, the technology they have, and what are their ultimate, needs. And then we come back with a recommendation around how Salesforce should be aligned to support their organization.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. We do something similar at the Shift Spot. Our sort of diagnostic tool is the gap analysis, where we kind of, it's a healthy questionnaire, and we kind of figure out what are the gaps that your business has and where do you need to allocate your resources to, fix those gaps. And it sounds like that you do something similar on the technology side, or the needs based on the needs of the business. Then you take that technology and make it fill those gaps for the end user.
Exactly. And a gap analysis is a great way of putting it, because that's exactly what it is, but it's really specific to Salesforce. Gotcha.
So let's get into the brass tacks. So, newer entrepreneur in the scheme of things, yet successful, doing really, really well. And so let's talk about what went well for you when you were starting your business. I mean, I know before we get into that, I know that you've got, you're being recognized in November for an award. So why don't you tell us about that?
Yeah. So I'm a finalist for the Atlanta Technology Professionals Technology Provider Technology Services Provider Award.
Okay.
And it is a recognition of successful technology service providers who've implemented new processes or have implemented new functionality for their customers to help them scale their organizations and help them drive success. So my team, we are very process driven. And so we like to identify what works and implement that for our customers across the board. So we're not only helping, our organization, we're helping our customers succeed.
Gotcha. Okay. So that's really cool. So tell us what you did right when you were first starting out.
Yeah. Well, I assume
you use Salesforce.
Yes, by default, yes. Last month actually was our 5-year anniversary. So we made it 5 years. And what I'll say that what was successful right off the bat is we started off remote, 100%. And what that did was keep costs low for us. It reduced our overhead and allowed us to be more competitive when getting our brand out there and getting more recognition as well. What I'll say to other entrepreneurs who are either starting off entirely remote or hybrid or even considering it is looking at systems that enable that. Because it's not just, you go remote and everyone just picks up a phone and just operates. We invest heavily in technology ourselves. So we went from, say, leveraging Trello to Asana to now we're using Jira as well to manage our collaborative space and our requirements for customers, to internal intranets, such as Notion, Confluence, or just Google Drive. A lot of these are low cost as well. They just require that, read the manual or hire someone to help implement it and run it for you all. Right.
So, I mean, that's very interesting that you started out completely virtual, because, how do you manage from afar? How do you know what people are doing, especially when it's not like you've, got this extensive like human resource background where you know exactly how to manage those people. So how did it go when you were first starting to like manage from a virtual role?
For me, I had a little bit of experience with that. So prior to starting this company, I worked at an organization called Blue Wolf, which is now part of IBM, as a senior consultant. And while we did have an office here in Atlanta, we also worked with offices around the world. That required frequent collaboration. So for me, coming in to my own organization, I needed to make sure that we had a collaborative space, such as Trello, to identify work. We need to have a means of tracking our time, as far as where we're logging against our clients or logging internal projects, and then communication. So communication is really important. So for my organization, we operate off of the East Coast Standard Time, regardless of where they are in the country. And we have standard response times as well, so that we always can stay in sync. So whether it's a chat, email, phone call, we just have standard response times within East Coast Standard operating hours.
Okay. And so then let's talk about some of the trials and tribulations. What was the hardest thing about getting a new business off the ground?
Well, let's see, one of the hardest. I would say it's a really good question. There's a lot of things that are challenging getting a business off the ground, of course, getting new customers, but I would say as well, cash flow, or just having cash in general, to have the technology in itself to maybe be able to operate the cash to pay your team as well, and then pay yourself.
Right.
One of the things that I do recommend for new entrepreneurs or experienced entrepreneurs as well, if they don't have a line of credit or have not looked into a line of credit, that is something that can provide flexibility as you scale. So that way you don't have to pull out a direct loan or have to sell off part of your business just to have capital.
Right.
Credit.
Right. Yeah, I think that a lot of newly started businesses, when it gets going and the steam gets rolling, and there's a lot that happens behind the scenes before you start to see that kind of snowball roll down the hill. You don't see the person pushing the ball up the entire mountain behind it. I think that a lot of people look at the business and say, wow, it's really successful, it's doing well. Like, they make it look easy, but it's kind of like the iceberg analogy where you're only seeing just the tip. You don't see the late nights. You don't see in the shower, you have that like, oh my God, did I send that email? Oh, did I pay that bill? You have these like little momentary things of, and you don't sleep, and you're constantly worrying about how to grow the business and how to reinvest the business. And so for somebody starting out, what would you recommend to them as something that they could do and do it well right from the get-go? Something that you may have learned along your journey.
Yeah, planning. So that is something to always start off with and constantly do to reevaluate. And you don't need technology around it. I would say if you can find good guidance around it, and definitely take advantage of that. There's several books that can help you just get started. And probably most entrepreneurs are at least familiar with The E-Myth by Michael Gerber. That's a great one just to start with.
Yeah.
If you're in the professional services consulting space, then I recommend $1 Million Consulting by Alan Wise. And then there's Traction by Gino Wickman. I also recommend, as far as really standardizing your processes, really creating a vision for your organization, and then preparing yourself for scaling.
Right. You mentioned that word several times today. What does scaling mean to you?
So scaling has to do with just being able to grow your organization. So when I started out, I did everything myself. And of course, just like everybody else, only have 24 hours in a day and some amount of energy. So I can only take on X amount of customers if I'm doing everything myself. Scaling has to do with being able to take on more. And by doing that, I need to grow my team. In order to scale, I need to develop processes to ensure that my team is going to deliver the same level of quality that I was promising my customers that I would do myself.
Right. So on that, you've scaled quite quickly. And one of the things you said really, stood out to you on our website, theshiftspot.com, was that one of the things we talk about is, some entrepreneurs and CEOs may be secretly afraid to grow, because they think if I grow too big, then I'm going to be doing even more than I'm already doing. And so a lot of times you'll get to a certain level of success and you did it all. You were the CPA, you were the bookkeeper, you were the marketer, you were the salesperson, you were the, IT department. You're doing it all. And then you can take up to a certain amount of clients. But then you hit that threshold where you can't actually keep both going anymore. So you're at that place where you go, do I even want to get any bigger?
Yeah.
So what have you done, or talk to us about that, those that are secretly afraid to grow? Because I think that we have in our culture, in our world, it's like more success, more, bigger and better, USA, woohoo, and so then people feel bad when they don't want to continue to grow bigger or get bigger. And it's because there's this sort of kind of devil and angel on the shoulder going, this is what everybody says you should do, but do I really want to do this kind of deal? So talk to us about that feeling, because I think it's something that's sort of hidden below the surface that people don't really want to talk about.
Yeah. Well, let's see. First, I'll start off with identifying why you're in business and what you want out of it, because there is social pressure to grow, but define what the success means for yourself, because you don't need to be the next billion-dollar company to be successful. Because
Right.
the larger you are, the more stress, but yes, there's more reward, there's more risk. So just defining what you really want out of this.
Right.
And then from that point, and I'll say work with me, even with a goal of growing bigger, there is that fear of growing, because once you start taking on more, that's more to manage.
Mm-hmm.
One thing that helps me sleep at night is one of our core values that I look to and look for when I try to identify talent and just reinforce, which is trust.
Mm-hmm.
You're only able to scale if you can trust that people are going to deliver based off of what you promise, what your customers trust for you.
Mm-hmm.
Because you will stay up late at night if you don't feel that you can trust that your organization is going to succeed without you being involved with everything.
Right.
If you have to be involved in every step along the way, you're not going to scale, you're not going to grow. And that's just a lot of anxiety. So identifying the right people to trust, to carry things forward, and then stepping back a little bit.
So there's a certain type A personality that, ends up being a CEO and entrepreneur or not. How do you step back? How do you let go of the control reins?
Yeah. Monitoring. So even though you trust, do you have, and in our case, technology, so you can see if your processes are being followed, where you can intervene, where you can coach, just to make sure that everyone is still aligned. Because just because I give, let's say, marching orders to go forward, there's still that verification.
Right.
Make sure that everyone is still aligned.
Mm-hmm.
And technology is a big enabler of just being able to monitor.
Right. So where do you see yourself investing resources for growth over the next year?
I see my team investing in our delivery team, which is our hands-on keyboard customer interacting with our customers, individuals. Behind the scenes, we have one operations person. We have a business operations manager who is also a role that I highly recommend for people starting off early on. That's the first area that I started letting go, to making sure that the business ran behind the scenes.
Right.
And that's often just people think they can do it themselves. Yeah.
Well, and you can up till that certain point. And then everything starts to suffer. And that's why, we've added the component in the shift spot about the, mind, body, and soul component. Yes, we help entrepreneurs and CEOs with their, finances and their processes and their systems and all of that. And you mentioned, getting the right information. This shift spot is a wonderful place for that, because, we kind of have all of those experts in one little area for you. But it's also if you do so much and you do so much and you do so much, you're going to hit a wall, and it's going to affect you physically or in a health way. And I have had it happen to me. I mean, the sickest I ever was, I was burning it day in and day out. And I was in my late 30s and I had all of the stamina in the world. But you hit a point, and it doesn't matter if you don't want to slow down, your body will do it for you. You know, your body will let you know enough is enough. And I know that a lot of, entrepreneurs and CEOs have gotten into similar issues with that. So, okay. So, anything else you want to wrap up to tell our listeners with? Anything, good, bad, or ugly that you could recommend to them given where you are now?
Well, one other piece of advice for especially new entrepreneurs is finding, as you mentioned with the shift spot, a peer group. Finding sounding boards, people who either have been through it before, they're going through it now, or they're considering it, so you can get multiple perspectives. Because like for me, I'm not the best expert when it comes to marketing or accounting or finance or human resources, but I do identify people out there in my circles or resources out there that can help my organization and just get that feedback, get that advice. And that's one of the things, going back to the E-Myth, the book by Michael Gerber really highlights that you should not look at yourself as an expert in all those different areas, and identify those resources as early as possible. So that way you don't get, into, a trouble situation. Right.
It's good. Very sound advice. And you have some events coming up in November that you want to talk about, right?
Yeah. Well, there's ATP, the Atlanta Technology Professionals Awards Gala, that is going to be in November. We also are posting events on our LinkedIn page. So if you go and follow LogicSpree on LinkedIn, you'll be up to date on the various events that we're sponsoring coming up. And we tend to sponsor events that highlight technology's impact on business strategy and operations, whether it's through Atlanta Technology Professionals, Technology Association of Georgia, Women in Technology, or Inspired You, which is a nonprofit that we support here locally as well.
That's awesome. That's great.
Yeah.
Okay. And if somebody wanted to reach out to you, what would be the best way for them to get a hold of you?
Yeah, I would say connect me on LinkedIn. And also, if you do see an event on our LinkedIn page and you're interested in attending, feel free to message me and we'll likely have a free ticket for you.
Ooh, free tickets. Yeah. We love that. And mention the shift spot to get a free ticket if they do have one available. So he knows where it came from. So awesome. Well, we appreciate you coming on with us today, and wish you the utmost continued success.
Thank you, Winter. And it's been a pleasure. Bye.
Bye.